House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, she's at it again. You know, stepping and stuff she really shouldn't be doing. This time she's making this absurd claim that Democrats are actually tougher than Republicans when it comes to border security. I mean, it doesn't even make sense, right? Because aren't the Democrats the ones that are calling for the abolishment of ICE? So it doesn't end there. She went on to then describe 9/11 as an incident. Listen to this here.
In fact, I said to some of you before that when we had the 9/11 incident and the commission was formed and they made their recommendations, they made recommendations to protect America. But the Republicans would never take them up. And some of it was about our borders.
An incident? I mean, really, that's how you describe the deadliest attack in America's history, as an incident? Joining me right now, former CIA officer Buck Sexton. Buck, always a pleasure. Good to have you back on the show.
Good to see you.
What is she missing here? I mean, how could I, and by the way, let me at least give her some benefit of the doubt. She was speaking extemporaneously, and perhaps it was just a very poor choice of words. But I mean, this is not the only time she has chosen some very poor words.
Yeah, if it wasn't Nancy Pelosi, I think most folks would be willing to give a little more of the benefit of the doubt here. But the truth is, Pelosi is pretty remote from the issues and interests of most of the American people. So going into the midterm, she's the gift that keeps on giving for Republicans. I think as much as possible, they should try to have Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer, a number of prominent Democrats out there as spokespersons, as proxies for all of the different elections that will be going on in states across the country. So that's one part of this. And then on the notion of Nancy Pelosi as border hawk, or as Nancy Pelosi was putting it, willing to do things that Republicans won't on the border. Notice how she didn't actually name any of these recommendations. It seems to me she has some faint recollection of some things in the 9/11 Commission report, perhaps, that she would like to have seen implemented, except she never did anything to implement them. And if it was such a good idea, why not actually tell us what it is? We know the Democrats are basically quasi-open borders now as a party, and Nancy Pelosi is helping to lead that effort. So I think that they should just be honest about that. But the problem is, Trish, the American people don't tend to agree with them.
You know, many years ago, there were a number of Democrats that actually did want better border security. And they actually talked about this long before the whole idea of the wall from Donald Trump ever surfaced. But now they have amnesia because apparently it's politically expedient to do so and to talk instead about just opening the floodgates and welcoming everyone. But, you know, I do think, Buck, that when push comes to shove and you talk to people out there in the middle of the country anywhere, it doesn't make sense to them, right? I mean, maybe to the coastal elites who don't actually have to interface with some of the challenges that may come from some of these illegal folks being here and the crime levels associated with that. Maybe they don't feel it as much. But when you go elsewhere in the country, or you go anywhere along the border there, say in Arizona or in Texas, people feel very differently. Why is there such a disconnect?
Well, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I mean, Nancy Pelosi is really emblematic of what you would call a limousine liberal or a private jet progressive, whatever your favorite terminology may be for it. This is somebody who isn't having to have her children share school classrooms with illegal immigrants who are going to need additional language training, who are often going to need a heavy dose of public services to help them. And while it's all well and good to be concerned for the less fortunate among us, there are a lot of Americans who are less fortunate and need assistance and help, who are legally in the country. And then once you also add into this employment as a factor, sure, the Pelosis of the world are not going to be competing with illegal immigrants for jobs, but the most comprehensive studies on this have shown that in state by state, region by region, when there's a surge in illegal immigration, wages in the unskilled professions tend to drop. It's simple supply and demand. People can argue about this all day. Right. I know there are even some open borders libertarians and conservatives out there, but people have seen this going on for a long time now. It's why Trump is in large part president, because he took up this issue, Trish. And the Democrats are flailing right now because they just have no message. When you've got over 4% GDP growth coming out, tough. And the best they can do is to say,
okay. Yeah, no, 4.1%. That's a tough thing to fight back against because people are feeling pretty good right now. Buck Sexton, thank you. Good to have you here.